Hi, this is Sunday the 8th of August 2021, Women's Day, and thank you for tuning in. This is the Democratic Alliance Labour Report, our weekly Labour Report. We try and come back to you once a week just with some of the small issues that have been happening in the world of labour. Well, one thing that has been interesting this week, it's got very little to do with labour, is the new cabinet. I was unpleasantly shocked to hear that Tito Mboweni has been removed. I wish him well. He, I think, has been a breath of fresh air in the cabinet. Of course, Ramaphosa hasn't got much to choose from, but I want to read something to you which was said in 1889 by Ernest Hemingway. Never mistake motion for action. So we've seen a motion from the presidency, we've seen some changes in the cabinet. This doesn't mean there's any action. I'm not so sure that this cabinet is going to do us any justice at all. But of course the swords are out, the daggers are out. Let's see if someone gets stabbed in the interim. It'll be an interesting exercise. In South Africa, nothing stays stagnant. We have big actions almost every week. So it's interesting, and I'm keeping a beady eye on all of this. In terms of what's happening with Women's Day, there's still a lot of research being done, but what is quite clear is that women are still, across the board, earning less than the men in equal jobs. That's shocking. It shouldn't be, and I'm hoping that government can try and somehow put pressure on people to say that people have to be treated equally. Of course, women do have access to the CCMA, bargaining councils, labour court, and if they see that they are being cheated, basically, they can actually apply for an unfair labour practice, and they should be doing this. So just in terms of Women's Day, also much strength to their arm on this exercise. The big thing that we're going to talk about today is still to jab or not to jab. It's still the question, and there's a lot coming out on this. I'm getting lots of queries and lots of events about it. I also want to talk about a certificate, a SIX certificate that has been doing the rounds and seems to be followed up on. I'm quite shocked about that. And so thank you for tuning in. Again, it's Sunday the 8th of August from the Democratic Alliance, and I am Michael Bagram, the Labour spokesperson. So thank you. Let me quickly just have a look at one or two other issues. In the Northern Cape, we've had two interesting events, very interesting events. One is there's been a fraud, again another tender fraud. At this time it was 22 million rand within the in the provincial government there in the Northern Cape. But of course we're so used to this we don't even open our eyes when we hear it. But what is interesting about this one is that NAHAWU, the National Education Health Workers Union, have come forward, and they're the whistleblowers. It's a union, and I commend them for this. Well done to the union, and I'm very impressed with them on that. Another thing that happened in the labour field in the Northern Cape, also within government, is that there has been a case of allegation of sexual harassment, and we have whistleblowers also come forward where one of the senior employees is trying to cover this up. So again, well done to the whistleblowers in cases like that. We need more people like that in South Africa coming forward. Helen Zille always used to call this consequence management, and she always used to say the government has no consequence management. In other words, you can do what you want and there'll be no repercussions. I'm hoping now that at least the unions are stepping in and also acting as the watchdogs. The Democratic Alliance has always been the watchdog since its inception, and that's one of the strict instructions that I've got, in that we have to have very clear oversight of where we are involved. I'm involved with the Department of Employment and Labour, and I'm watching them like a hawk. I speak up whenever I have to, I write whenever I have to, and I fortunately am not being cowed by threats from people in the Department of Employment and Labour. In particular, in the oversight exercise, I know that the chairperson of the committee in Parliament, the Labour Committee in Parliament, our portfolio, Did try it once to threaten me with all sorts of disciplinary action. It never came to pass. Don't think it ever will. But I took the threat with a pinch of salt. So that's one of our functions as the Democratic Alliance, that we do need to look at this very carefully and watch where we're going. I just want to quickly have a look at an attendance certificate. What has happened is a lot of the clinics have run out of the test to test whether you're positive with COVID or not. I don't know when they're going to get these tests again, but if they can't test the person, what they're doing is they're saying, oh, well, you've got some symptoms, so we're going to give you a certificate and say that you got COVID. And of course, this is creating havoc because people have now cottoned on to this in the factories, and a few factories have come back to me to tell me this as a labour lawyer, and they're saying dozens of people are just going into the clinic saying they've got a sore throat and a runny nose, and they're getting a certificate saying COVID. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm busy looking down here at one of these certificates now. We're going to have to challenge it, and it can't be the case at all. And the main topic I wanted to talk about today is still this, to get the jab or not to get the jab. This has created havoc at some of the workplaces. Now what's happened is COSATU have jumped in and have threatened employers. And threatened them is the right word, and many employers are coming back to me and they're saying the no jab, no job policy is going to be attacked and no company will be left unturned. And now we've got a real problem in that people are saying, well, the president said I don't have to have the jab, and so therefore you can't force me, and you also can't take disciplinary action against me. Well, let me put it absolutely clear. If you've gone through the exercise that I explained in a podcast, I think it was last week or the week before, I think it was last week, if you go through that exercise, the operational requirements means that the employee must be there, and you've got no other job for that employee, and the employee has got no health reason to explain why they can't have the jab, there's no religious reason why they can't have the jab, then you might have to actually dismiss them, and the question becomes, do you dismiss because they're just being naughty, or do you retrench because they have got a real reason? I mean, for instance, if you've got, you're taking very strict blood thinners, and no one wants to give you the jab, so it's not your fault, but they can't use you in any other position except if you have to have the jab, I would suggest it's an operational requirements decision, and they should actually go through a retrenchment. So I'm suggesting that. I just wanted to tell one little story about this, and that is where a group of people were offered the jab from a small business, happened to be a client of mine, will remain nameless, and that small business said to everyone, I'll give them the day off to have the jab. They all took the day off. One came back and said he decided that he wasn't going to have the jab. And they were thinking, you know, he went and took the day off anyway. That's duplicitous and wrong, and they wanted to have a disciplinary inquiry, and I said, let's wait and see. Let's first speak to him and see before we have that inquiry. Well, something interesting happened there, where the group of people came forward to management and said, we've all had the jab, and we're feeling a bit more secure, we're waiting for our second one, but Joe Soap, who shall remain nameless, refuses to have the jab, and we don't want to work with him. We don't want him here because we're all in close proximity and he is a risk. And that's an interesting one. Now the employers come forward and said, well, to Joe Soap, what are you going to do about that? We haven't resolved it. They've told him to stay at home. They probably will dismiss him because he doesn't have a good reason for not having the jab. He hasn't said religious or health or bodily integrity. He just said he doesn't feel like it. And he knows full well that the others are very upset that he wouldn't have the jab. And so I suspect very strongly what we're going to have here is a dismissal. It'll be challenged at the CCMA, and then let's go forward and see what happens maybe at the Labour Court in due course. So thank you for listening to me. It's Michael Bagram, Labour's spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance. This is Sunday the 8th of August 2021, Women's Day 2021, and let's wish all the women best of luck, and hopefully they'll get parity at the workplace in due course. I would be very pleased if you could distribute this podcast. I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much.